Business, a person's occupation, profession, or trade. Connection, a relationship in which a person or idea is linked or associated with something else. Welcome to Business Connection. Each week, our program will offer inspiration to navigate the business world. Information you can use to succeed in any field. And we will help you focus on your goals. Join us now for Business Connection with your host, B.C. Clark.
Well, hello. This is the Business Connection, and I'm your host, B.C. Clark. As you know, I interview business owners across the state, some out of state, and some that, are thinking about getting going. So today my guest is Nicole Lewis. Nicole is a triple entrepreneur, but today she's going to share with us her new venture. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, this is awesome. So talk a little bit about Nicole, and then we'll get into that new business that you started recently.
Definitely. So my name is Nicole Lewis. I am a speaker, a femininity coach.
Okay.
What that means is simply I just help people to create their feminine balance through their habits, through self-reflection, and through healing.
Okay.
It's a lot. The other things that I do is I teach classes. Mm-hmm. So we'll kind of get a little bit more into that, but I teach etiquette classes as well. I had my first book published in 2018, which is A Girl's Secrets. So it's my life story, ultimately sharing those wisdoms and those thought processes so other people can reflect on their own thought processes and why we do what we do.
And that's important because I think, especially when you're young and you're going through things, and if you come from a traumatic kind of childhood, those things haven't been healed. And so the way that you act out as you grow older is by doing a lot of stupid things. And it's not your fault. You just don't realize it's the trauma that's causing that. So it's good that you have, people can read someone else's story and the things that they're going through, that person had already went through and talked about what they did. So that gives them the opportunity to say, okay, I have a problem, right?
Definitely. My first book really covers a lot more of the childhood traumas and how do we respond to those without doing being in a victim standpoint. Because it's okay to understand that we were not responsible for those things, but it's also important to see how to reflect on how we reacted. What coping skills did we develop because of that? What things did we find ourselves more attracted to because of those childhood traumas? Yeah,
and I think the other thing too is that even though you know that maybe the abuse wasn't your fault, you still feel guilty, or you feel like it's your fault. And so working through those issues, and that's what I liked about, that was a show that came on with, I think her name was Inyana. She was one of Oprah's friends, and she said, you have to do your work to come out of the traumas that you were in. And until you do, you are lost and not finding yourself. And I think that's a very true statement. I really do. Definitely. Because if you look at some of the individuals who had very traumatic childhoods, they fought and fought and fought. They fought establishment, they fought authority, they fought everything to do their own thing because they were trying to get back what was stolen from them. And I think that a lot of times people don't realize that a lot of the acting out, even with the young girls today and the young men, it's because of what's happened, and they can't, they were kids. So now this is in their face and they don't know how to deal with it. So now they're dealing with it by acting out. It's just mechanisms that they're using. But to really be able to get them the help they need, it doesn't help to put them in a juvenile place or anything like that. But I think going through, inversion, diversion, all this stuff, it really allows them to be able to come out of those traumas, at least have the information they need to work through.
Definitely.
So that's really good. I mean, it's your show, isn't it?
No, just I think it is really important for people to recognize that a lot of the activities, a lot of the reactions is traumatic. And it's not just necessarily like the traditional type of trauma.
Right.
These kids are now dealing with, we see trauma.
Yeah.
We are being exposed to it on the news, on
Everywhere.
if they're going onto YouTube, if they're going onto TikTok, those kind of things, and things being replayed over and over and over
And in
again.
their neighborhoods, they're seeing people being shot. They're seeing, people being stabbed. They're seeing all kinds of crimes. And, God bless the ones who can kind of, have someone that can help them along the way. But it's the ones that don't have anyone to help them along the way. The ones who maybe their parents are incarcerated or something, or maybe those who have someone that is abusive to them right now. Those things are hard. Mm-hmm. And as kids, how are they supposed to cope?
Yeah, it's very interesting in our society. We teach them about math, science, reading. Mm-hmm. We teach them very little bit of biology about their actual physical body. Mm-hmm. We teach them nothing about coping skills, really honestly, how to just deal with the everyday things. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about conflict. You're going to have conflict, so how do you deal with it? Right. So it's very interesting that there's this huge gap in education, because you have parents that they have to work. Yeah. It was a time period where it was one parent was able to stay at home, and now both parents sometimes both of them are working 2 jobs just to survive.
Exactly. It's a different time, for sure. And I think that's part of the problem as well. But they don't have it's not their fault. We have inflation, we have craziness in the news, and people are just trying to make it. I think about the economy right now, and people are complaining, but I think that the best way is to just do what you can do, and don't worry, because if you worry, then nothing gets done. But I think that for all those parents out there who maybe are having some issues with kids, I think the best thing to do is to try and find the help that they need, because that's all it is. They need help. And you probably need help too, because you're trying to rear these kids, and work and do all the things you do. So the whole family probably needs help, and not that we're here to talk about mental illness, but I think it's such a huge thing in our community that it's worth talking about. But there's so many areas where they can go and get help. And I want to just bring up one. I want you to get back to the etiquette, because I feel like that's good too, because that also is a way for people to channel energy that they don't know what to do with. And I think it's good for them, because not only do they learn how to eat properly, how to lay the table and all this out, they also learn some good, I want to call it good affirming basics of life, which that you teach in that class. But I want to talk about, because it's happening all over the place. And I was just reading something this morning about a young lady that, killed herself. And, young, a firefighter. My grandson, it was someone, he's in Texas, and it was someone, and, he didn't know what had happened. They just said that, she had passed. And he was like, well, she was just here, And so for him, he's trying to, and then he found out that she had, was suicide. So I want to just make some recommendations. And I know there's a lot of mental health places all across, and they're all good. One I know that's in our area here in Omaha is Doris Moore. Mm-hmm. Doris Moore, and I want to pull the name of her place.
Center for Holistic
Development.
Center
for Holistic, yes. So, and I think she's located out on 103rd and 4th. So if you're having challenges and you're not sure where to go, start there, because they can always refer you out if you need additional, if you're doing, need something that they don't have. But Doris Moore running Center for Holistic Medicine, I think it is, or something like that. Development. Yeah. Center for Holistic Development, 103rd and 4th. Check it out, because you need to know, and you need to have at least one place to go that maybe can get you to the next place. And I know that they do that. So if it's something they don't do, they do refer to the next resource. So check her out. if you're having, if you're experiencing any things like that with mental illness with your children or even with yourself, because they treat adults and youth. Okay, so back to you, sir. That was just my plug for that, because I know it's needed in the community. And after I heard about that this morning, it's just like, we have to
I
catch
think
our
that's
kids
something
before
that we do need to touch on, because it has been such a taboo for so many years.
I know people wouldn't talk about it.
But the reality is our churches used to be where we would go to get our therapy and our counseling, and more people are not going to the church anymore.
Right.
So we do have to start promoting,
These
finding
resources.
people that align with your values, right? Align culturally with you.
Yes.
Because there is a difference going for it. And I've had that personal experience in my healing journey of going to therapists that was not culturally aligned with me, which is very interesting because how I identify culturally is a little different.
Yeah.
But
You know what? I'm going to start. That is something that's really important, because I think that when you're going to someone who maybe don't understand your culture, don't understand your background, and a lot of them, it doesn't seem like to me that they're taking a lot of time to understand who you are, to understand maybe what things you're really, really dealing with, and or either they take too long because they want to get paid for you to keep coming. I'm sorry, but I think that's key. Because we have different cultures. There's certain things we do in our cultures that really could be affecting how, in some cultures it may be considered negative in a way. So, but we don't know that until you know all of that. So that's a good point you make. Someone that's culturally, that can grind with you and really help you through whatever it is that you're going through. So that's important too, to find someone that really fits you.
definitely.
So.
And that kind of really goes right into what I do. I know I call it Habits of a Queen, etiquette training courses, but it's really urban etiquette. So they get that understanding of what traditional etiquette looks like with the understanding and in their language. So they can really...
They can relate to it.
Yeah, they can definitely digest it. They can definitely relate to it. I think it's important. One of the things that I talk about is communication. And how to communicate. We can't relate to other people if we cannot communicate.
Exactly.
So that's one of the biggest ones that I talk about in body language. There is a difference between cultures on what you do and what you don't do. Yeah. And we're in Omaha. We're in the United States, so we're becoming more and more of a melting pot.
Yep.
So it's really important for us to get to know how to interact with other cultures.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I talk about. Because if there's the verbal communication, and then sometimes you can't communicate verbally.
Right.
So all you have to work on is the nonverbals. So we also talk about that. We also talk about people with hearing impairment or difficulty hearing, because a person that can't hear, they're not going to necessarily come and tell you that they can't hear you.
Exactly.
They're phenomenal at reading lips. So I talk to my students about how important it is to pronounce their words properly.
Yes.
And it's also bridging that gap between code switching and why you would need to pronounce your words properly, why you would need to look at somebody in the eyes, so that they can see your facial expression, how different. In our community, we typically talk a lot with our hands. I talk a lot with my hands.
I know. I watched myself one day. Honest to God, when I realized, I was like, when I go up to speak, I need to have my hands by my side. It's a sense of understand, because you don't need to talk with your hands, because people will go to your hands. You know what I'm saying? And I saw that happening. It's true, and I don't know where it came from. I don't know. It's not cultural, as far as I know.
It is very cultural.
Is it?
Yes, definitely.
In what culture?
So if you ever pay attention to different cultures, like the African American community, we typically talk a lot with our hands.
Okay.
The more European communities, they do talk a little bit with their hands, but their examples is not that of people who talk with their hands. Okay. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
we have all had the auntie that's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
or is making like
Yeah.
big gestures.
Oh, maybe that's where it came from. Didn't I tell you?
Exactly, exactly.
So maybe that's, yeah, okay, when you said that, I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. And so I guess it is cultural because I don't know any parents back in my day that didn't use their hands to tell us. And when they used that finger, we knew that they were serious. And so, you know, we were watching that hand. I think also, Nicole, that in today's society, kids, like in my era, you weren't allowed to really express yourself.
Yeah.
They will cut you off, you know. Okay, well, go, you know, I mean, you just didn't get to express yourself like you wanted to. I mean, some people probably did, but, and I think that causes people to lose their voice.
Yes. And that's why I call my etiquette habits of a queen, so that they all understand that they are queens in their own nations.
Yeah.
They will bring in a whole new nation of people, right?
Yes.
And so how they present themselves, the values that they hold, the traditions that they hold, will affect generations coming forward.
Absolutely.
And that is also how I teach them to have a voice. Because if you do not have a voice for yourself, you leave a whole generation behind.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's really important because I think up until maybe a couple of years ago, look how much abuse that was happening behind the scenes, you know, not only in Hollywood, it's been happening all over the place forever, but people never talked about it. But the Me Too movement brought a lot of voices out. A lot of people, you know, even our poor kids that you're taking to gymnastics, they were being abused. I mean, it was just so much widespread abuse. And I think what happened to me, what to me, the most important thing that came out of Me Too was people were able to speak and it changed their lives. You know, you'll hear people always telling them, use your voices. Use your voices. And that's come from just back in the day that you weren't allowed to really express yourself. Yeah. You know, you got cut off or, you know, that's not important or you don't need to worry about, you know, things like that. And I think that does affect people. So even when you get older, you still have some of those things like, okay, maybe I shouldn't say this or maybe I shouldn't say that. It's not until you really, really, really dig into yourself, find out who you are.
Definitely. And
the purpose that you're here, that you can stand and talk freely, you know what I mean, and have your voice and say what you think, say what you feel. Because a lot of times people will get to a point where they want to say it, they'll say everything but what they're really feeling.
So that is part of, when we do go over communication, that's part of how I communicate with them, is show them how to set their boundaries without offending other people. Set the tone of the conversation. How to have hard conversations is a workshop that I do. In that workshop, we talk about there are some really hard conversations to have. The beautiful thing, and this kind of ties both my book into my etiquette classes, is sometimes we need an example to start the conversation off.
Sure.
So I tell people all the time, use my book. That's what it's there for. There's a hard conversation that you need to have, and you don't know how to start it, and you don't know how a person's going to react to it, because that's usually why we don't have those conversations.
Yeah, it's you have to build up to it.
Definitely.
I think for me, because I've been in positions where there were people that worked under me, and I know when I was at ConAgra, I had people all over the place, different cultures, different everything, and you really have to understand each of your employees, understand their personalities, understand their culture, what works for this culture may not work for that culture, and trying to get all of that balance so that you can be an effective manager. And so what I found out the hardest thing to do was when there was a time when you had to let someone go, or, you know, when there's, you know, and I would struggle with it, but after a couple times, it didn't, I mean, no, I'm not trying to be funny, but it didn't bother me because a lot of times the only reason you're doing that is to better them, because they're not working in the position or and maybe you put them in different levels to try to see if you could help them. But then a lot of times there may not be the skill set that you need or whatever, or either they're just not willing to go hire it themselves. And once you understood that, then it was easier to say, here's some things that I want to recommend for you. Here's some things, and then also give them some resources, And so it was never like, okay, here you go, just get out the door. No, it was never that. It was always, how can I really help you? How can I help you get to, what is it that you really want to do? At the time I was an IT manager, so how, what area, I've had you in PC, I've had you over here, what is it that you really want to do? And a lot of times in that hard moment, they'll say, well, I don't really want to do this. I don't like doing it because, we have tests all the time and I have to pass this to get my certifications. I don't like it. No, this is, and the guy was so honest. And I said, okay, great. I said, well then, is it another area in the organization that you want to work in? What do you want? You know what I mean? Yeah. So to me, and it became easier for me once I really found out, the reason why they couldn't do the job is because they didn't have the skills. Then because some people can take tests and pass, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we always did a skill-based test because it was IT when they would come in. And of course, if they passed, it still didn't mean they were going to get the job because we were, back then people were coming in plentiful. So you had a good number of people to choose from. But then there were some that took the job because for the money.
Yeah.
And not really the position. So, but anyway, I brought that up because sometimes, that's reason why a lot of people don't have that voice or don't, use their voice because they've been shut down so many times. And that's why I'm very careful when I talk to, my children or my grandchildren and, great baby, like, try to, I like him to finish whatever he's trying to say, even though I may not understand it,
Yeah.
just, okay. Where is it at? What's it called? I do that so he can he needs to build, and get to that point. So, but I'm thinking, Lord, back in the day, I didn't do that with my own kids, did I? Did I help them? Because parenting doesn't come with a book. You know that. We all know that.
The placenta coming out should be their manual.
It should be a manual. Yes, I agree.
Definitely. I would say this, that it is really important for us to bring back humanity.
Yeah.
We kind of started getting away from that. Social media has created that space as well. And I think that's one of the other things that plagues our students and our young people is that they spend so much time on their phones.
And they care so much about somebody they don't even know saying about them.
Yep.
I'm like, I went through that with some of my grandchildren. What they said, I was like, who is they? For years I've been trying to find out who they is. Who is they? What they said, well, who are they though? Mm-hmm. And why does it matter to you that they said it? They're not your family. They're not paying they're not taking care of you. They're not, what? And I did that for years, but they finally got it, especially my one granddaughter, she got it good. She was like, I don't care what they say. They don't pay. You know what I mean? You have to watch what you say to them too.
Definitely.
I don't care what they say. What?
One of the things that I talk about or I teach my students is they live in this world that they think their friends that they have right now is going to be with them for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And I explain to them that the reality is
friends are not their friends, even the ones they think.
Majority of the time, we might have one high school friend, mm-hmm. maybe, depending on if you are consistent in going to the same school. So that's the other issue.
That's right.
You might have an elementary school friend or a middle school friend, mm-hmm. but it's going to be one.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the 10 people that you're hanging out with right now.
No.
And the reality is as you transition, even 5 years ago, I would say 8 years ago, the people that I hang out with now mm-hmm. is completely different than even who I hung out with even 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we need to pay attention to that, mm-hmm. that our peer circle should be changing. Our skills.
Because as you grow, you don't even like the same things that you liked 5 years ago. Half the time, you don't even haven't dealt with those people that were really close to you 5 years ago. Because, we get to a point where we do different things in our lives.
Yeah.
Like I look at MLWBC, some of the women I met over the years, that was over 5,000 some women. I'm sure I was friends with a lot of them. Can I tell you some of them? Yeah, I can. But I can say that, a whole bunch of them I can't even remember. But I mean, yeah, your life changed. You do different things. You move in different directions.
Definitely.
And so, but I think these kids, they're so fooled by social media. It's a fantasy world, but they don't believe it. They think it's real. They think everything they see on there is real.
It's interesting, the young ladies that I work with. So I work with young ladies ages 12 to 18 predominantly. I'm getting ready to move into the space of then offering for adults because I get asked that question all the time. But they're smart. So a lot of the young ladies that I'm working with, they're starting to put pieces together as they're coming to class and they're getting those experiences and they're getting those aha moments.
Yeah, they're healing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. They're healing. And that's what should be happening. You know, every class, that's why they have so many girls now they're trying to place, because they should be in some kind of program like this where they're able to heal
Yeah.
before they get to that next level of their life. Because especially the teenagers that are in high school, they're getting ready to go out to a bigger world than where they are right now. And they need to know, they need to have some skills. They need to have some thoughts, some wisdom. And a lot of times they get that by hearing it,
Yeah.
you know, so, and by going through a class where they're learning.
Yeah.
So kudos to that, yeah.
The other thing is parents didn't get the opportunity to heal. So I look at myself. I had my first kid at 13. I didn't fully understand everything until the kids were grown and out the house, you know.
Before you know it.
Before I was like, what do I like? You know, and taking and not to say that I didn't do some healing of some things, I did, but it's like an onion.
Yeah.
You know, when you're being a mom and you can only handle so much because you're having to deal with the pressure of raising your kids.
Yeah.
So
We got about 50 seconds left. But
Okay.
I want us to talk about this because, go ahead and finish that, but I just want to make sure.
yeah, so I just want to say that the adults need the support.
Yeah. And you know, back in the day, there was great grandma, there was grandma, and you know, and all this. And today, you know, sometimes it's not even mom.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, a lot of times they're raising the kids by themselves and they're trying the best they can. They get frustrated, so then that sometimes can cause abuse with the kids. But you know, I think what we want to talk about and leave here, there's an etiquette class that they can learn from. Nicole, just go ahead and say the website real quick.
Nicole Lewis, NicoleLouis.com.
All right, go there for information. The classes are ongoing, so go to that website and you'll be able to find out. This has been the Business Connection, and we'll see you next time.